I don't even know what to think, and I don't know who to tell. I don't know who to confide in, and I'm the only one. That's the biggest thing of all of it. I can't tell it. Who can I tell? Like, even my best girlfriends, I never told them. They only found out 2 weeks ago when I did my live video, because I was like, what if I confide to this person and somehow along the way they tell someone else and everyone will know about this about me? And the thought that someone might think it about you or know it about you, you just think one of my best friends said to me, I can't believe you never told me. And I said to him, I replied in text, I said, you think that you'd rather die than ever have those words come out of your mouth.
Welcome back to the Open Up podcast and to episode 107, round number 2 with Bek Antonucci. This one's going to be a good one. Spicy. She's got something she wants to get off her chest, and I'm pretty fucking pumped, pretty fucking stoked, because this takes a lot of courage. Bek, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for being here with me while I do it. Couldn't imagine asking anyone else to hold me through this one.
I asked you this last time, but I'm interested to know, because of what you've been through, being a coach at Bridge and Extreme, as well as going through Stretch 22 now with Preston and his coaches. Could you describe the way that you view yourself as a woman and or human?
The living embodiment of female empowerment, radical self-expression, and radical self-acceptance. And my greatest desire in life is to see every woman who enters my energetic space achieve exactly that for her. So I look at myself as a permission bearer and the person that's fighting her ego, that's gripping on so tightly. And I'm like, you know what, I see you and I love you, ego, but I'm willing to say the things that are uncomfortable and the things that my ego really just doesn't want me to say out loud, if it creates a space for another woman to really love herself.
I love that.
Thank you.
The first part of it was the same, but you've definitely added to it and pushing through and breaking through that ego.
One of my coaches in Stretch 22, she's just this radical, Miriam Brewer, she's this radical permission bearer. Like, she looks like she's having the best time all the time, and she's just her. She is, even Preston says, I've never met a more authentic person in my entire life. And it inspires him to be a more authentic version of himself. And I just think Preston's one of the best men in the world. And I look at her and I think, there's not any, I don't judge you for any single thing. And it doesn't look like she judges herself either. And I'm like, that's what, she creates that space for me to say, you know what, no matter what's happened in my life, and no matter how I view myself, I get to be me in every single moment. Right now, this is exactly who I am. So rather than masks and mirrors and smoke and all of that jazz, I'm just going to show up right now as I am.
That's powerful. That's amazing. That's an awesome space to be in. And I think the first time I had any sort of contact with Miriam was when she turned up to Bridge and she just started shouting, yes, yes, or something like that. Yeah. Just like, who is this? Yeah, just assuming she was on all types of Red Bull and coffee, but that's just her.
That is just her.
And like, she dresses different. She's out there, she's outgoing. Like, she's very much different in the way that she behaves, which is not considered normal, but she's so comfortable in that. And I love that, and I love that it's rubbing off on you. And
it creates a space. I saw that in myself. I saw this ego growing up in, society where we portray ourselves a certain way, a social media society, a fitness background where you look a certain way and everything's to do with how you portray yourself, and what back thought is, how are you perceiving me right now? So it's never, I'm just going to be me and I don't really care what you think. It's no, let me portray myself so that I think that I can get you to like me. And Miriam is just so likable, and I've witnessed her just radically be herself and witness all the people in her space become the better versions of themselves, no matter what it looks like. Because you just see a person start to enjoy themselves so much more.
That's amazing. I think with what you're going to share today, we might just recap from the start of what you shared last time, up until that point. We're going to start telling that story.
Yep, sure. So my journey stems from being bullied severely in high school. I went to a prestige all-girls school, and I was bullied to the point that I thought the solution was to attempt to take my own life at age 14, 15. And I have a really positive mental health, so it was a really tough time for me to go through that. From there, I had created this huge distrust with women and threw myself into a relationship, and that ended really abruptly and violently, and I was physically assaulted by my boyfriend, and we broke up immediately. And from that point, I just decided I didn't trust men or women. I felt unsafe with both sexes, and I thought if I change my exterior and I look physically strong, potentially people won't hurt me or won't try to, or they'll think that I'm strong and they won't enter my energetic space. What I didn't know is that I was quite an attractive girl, and when I started changing my body radically, people started being really nice to me. And so I was in this really busy gym, changing my body. I started dieting and started dieting extremely, and looked after a couple of months like a fitness model in a very busy gym. Everyone started being super nice to me. Everyone knew my name. All the men were asking my name. All the men were asking to date me or take me out somewhere. All the girls were talking to me. They wanted to train with me, or I was invited to a party. Instantly, I was popular, and that became this new ego addiction and I was young and impressionable. I was 18, 19, and I associated being attractive and having a great body with external validation, which meant people liked me, which I then thought that meant people can't hurt me. And that started this roller coaster of dieting, which then turned into eating disorders, which turned into a very toxic and a self-abusive time with food and body image, bulimia, and that lasted for a really long period of time before so many events have occurred in my life that this last thing that I'm about to share with you now was the final catalyst. I thought that if I could look a certain way, have certain things, and I was seeking my acceptance in the external. I thought that everything was without, so outside of myself, whether it be where I live or the car that I drive, the job that I have, the boyfriend that I date, so that I look a certain way so that people say, oh, you and your boyfriend look so good, and that would be just like, oh, a little bit of validation. My ego would be like, yes, won them over. And then this final thing that I'm about to share with you is the catalyst of my soul journey, and the final straw, the straw that broke the camel's back for the universe to say, it's time to stop abusing yourself, physically harming yourself, because extreme dieting and abusing yourself with food is also self-abuse, and it's time to start looking within. And this was the final straw of my very extreme body image journey.
Well, that's a lot.
In a nutshell. That's 10 years in 5. There you go.
One thing I want to ask from that, and I'm not too sure if I asked it last time, is being in that relationship with that boyfriend, and as soon as that had happened to you, you were treated poorly, you said you broke up with him. Where does that come from as someone who has mistrust and isn't too fond of themselves, or doesn't value themselves too highly?
Well, to be particularly honest, I really wanted him back, and he didn't want to get back with me because that happened. He wouldn't talk to me. He jumped. He was in the front of a car. He jumped over the passenger. No, he was in the back of the car with me, punched me. His best friend jumped, grabbed him, pulled him out of the car. He was outside of the car punching the car, and then his best friend pulled him away. And then that was the breakup. And then I just remember waking up the next day, I had an egg on my head, a bruise all down my face. And all I wanted was my boyfriend back, because I didn't know any different. And that's where I knew love. I'd never been accepted in society. Have a great family, but family, I was raised to know that family always loves you. So that was just a given. I wanted love elsewhere. And because I had that from him, all I wanted was that back. And so I called him, he wouldn't answer. That was probably my shame, that I knew that I'd been disrespected so terribly, but I loved him so much that I just wanted him to want me.
Was that for the validation of having a partner? Like, obviously easier to see it now than back then.
I think also your first love, like I think I said this to you last time, my first boyfriend, I was super in love, your first everything, and I was just really 19 years old, and I'm really good at putting all my eggs in one basket, so all my eggs were definitely in his basket, and I thought blue eyes and blonde hair, and I just thought he was the best thing ever. So
the first word that popped to my head when you said blue eyes, blonde hair was yum.
yeah, I thought, I don't know, now like at 31, I'm like, what were you thinking? But at 18, 19, I just thought he was, I think I met him when I was maybe 16, 17. I thought he was amazing.
All right, let's get on to your story.
Yeah.
You comfortable walking us through it?
Yes. Okay. So, I really am grateful to do this with you. And I actually posted a Facebook Live about it 2 weeks ago. And from that point, I've had lots of people request podcasts. And I'm like, I get to do this with Lockie because this really means a lot to me to sit here, especially given our journey together, at Bridge and Extreme and everything. But 6 years ago, I found out that I test positive for herpes, or HSV2, or genital herpes. So I found this out 6 years ago when I was going through a breakup with the man that I thought was the love of my life, and we had a quite messy breakup, and I left him for another man. And I can guess, I can't guarantee where it came from. I guess it came from him, and ego wants to find the person to blame. And that's, the start of, I guess, this conversation.
What, can you walk us through what that's like, having somebody tell you that? Because for most people, that would be like, oh shit, this is the end of my sexual experience as a human being.
So a lot of people think that your sex life is completely ruined once this happens. So I was 25. I had a small number of sexual partners by this time. Casual sex wasn't something that was on my radar. I'd had long-term partners, and I typically would make partners wait 2 to 3 months before I'd trust them to go there with them. So perhaps being naive and uneducated, STIs weren't something that was on my radar. And I remember experiencing intense stomach pains, like just really bad pains. And I'm not a person to complain of pain, and I'm very pro-natural health. And so I rarely ever go to the doctors. And so I said to my girlfriend, I'm in so much pain. And she was like, oh, okay, interesting. Said it was starting to get worse. It got to the point that I could barely walk. I was in so much pain. I was like, I need to go to the doctor. And it was a Friday. And I went to the doctor and I said to her, I'm experiencing like these intense pains and it's hurting to urinate. And she's like, okay, well, we'll just do a routine STI check. And I just looked at her and said, oh, no, not that. I only sleep with boyfriends. Can't be that. And she was like, well, maybe we'll just do a routine STI, just to be sure. When was the last time you had one? And then that's kind of like when the first penny dropped that I haven't actually ever had one, because I just marked myself as safe, having only slept with boyfriends. And so from that point, my memory is quite vague because it feels like a mental breakdown. But I lied on her bed. She did a routine check, did a urine sample and everything. And then when I sat down on a chair, she just went straight to a computer. She didn't say anything. I think she said like, oh, darling, and printed me an information sheet for herpes and handed it to me. When I looked at it and I was like, okay, so how do I get rid of it? Like, just write me a script and I'll be out of here and it'll be gone. I don't know what this is. I don't understand it. And she was like, oh, you don't. And from that point, that's when I was like, that's when my memory is completely blank of like, my life is now over. How do I essentially end my life potentially? And that's quite common. Suicidal thoughts are attached intensely with this. And I just remember crying. I drove. From that point, I was like, no one can ever know this about me, ever. I'm never going back to that doctor. I hate her. I'm never going back there. Only she knows. I went back to my partner's house and he was like, well, not my partner, but the man that I'd left my partner for. And I crashed on the floor and I said to him, oh my God, I've just been told by the doctor this. And his face dropped, because before we slept together, he promised me that he'd been checked a week prior and was completely clear. And so he was just really sympathetic, promised me it never came from him, that he'd been checked the week prior, he was all good, and then said, I love you unconditionally and you're beautiful and I'm sorry that you're in pain. What can I do to help you? And I just took Xanax. You're in so much pain. I just took Xanax after Xanax after Xanax and slept for about 3.5 to 4 days straight until the pain went away. And from that point, at the end of those 4 days, I was like, I'm going to have to get up and face life at some stage and stop sleeping through this. And then I was like, what do I do? No one can ever know this about me. I'm ruined, I'm wrecked, I'm this thing that society says is disgusting. It's a virus, but society says it's a disease. I've got a disease. No one can ever know this about me. I might kill myself. That was like that 4 or 5 day process.
Wow. Looking back now, how do you think that process needs to change when you're going to see a doctor and they, I guess, diagnose you or tell you that you've got that? Because for a girl so young who's just said, hang on a minute, I only sleep with boyfriends, like what are you supposed to do with that information, especially not knowing that that's not the end of your sexual experience?
Yeah, and well, especially because, I mean, a little bit of backstory as well is that breakout is the only one that I've ever had. So I lived in fear for a long time for this intense pain to come back, and it never did. And I was just kind of waiting for it, like, oh, this horrible thing is about to happen to me at some stage, any stage, when's it going to happen? And I couldn't imagine having that experience again. If it was paired with seeing a psychologist or going to someone who worked specifically in sexual health, that could or be passed on to, referred to someone that specialises in sexual health, knowing that it is heavily stigmatised. But, you know, it's taken me 6 years to get to this point, but of everything, I'm like, it's just herpes. And it would have killed me then for someone to say it's not a big deal. And when someone confides in me, I never say that to them because I feel like it says to them like it's a joke or something. Yeah. It's not, it's serious and it's horrible to go through, but it's nowhere near as bad as what you think it is when you're told it. And once you get through it, you're like, wow, that whole process to get to here, I never thought I'd get out of it. But some kind of psychological support and reassurance that your first breakout, it may never occur again or it will never be as bad again. Google is like the most horrible thing. It just makes your head worse. You start reading. I was on forums. I had read blogs about women never sleeping with anyone ever again. People are so deep in shame that they're just experiencing intense suicidal thoughts. People on forums or communities for herpes, finding herpes. I'm like, yeah, and you just like, your head just thinks it's going to explode of like, I don't even know what to think, and I don't know who to tell, I don't know who to confide in, and I'm the only one. That's the biggest thing of all of it. I can't tell it. Who can I tell? Like even my best girlfriends, I never told them. They only found out 2 weeks ago when I did my live video, because I was like, what if I confide to this person and somehow along the way they tell someone else and everyone will know about this about me, and the thought that someone might think it about you or know it about you, you just think one of my best friends said to me, I can't believe you never told me. And I said to him, I replied in text, I said, you think that you'd rather die than ever have those words come out of your mouth.
That's intense.
That's how much intense shame is attached to it.
Especially for someone so young, and having like gone to extreme and having quite a few people open up about actually having herpes themselves. Mm-hmm. I was like, holy fuck, you guys are brave, but number two, that doesn't look like herpes, like from what I'd perceive it to be.
Because the perception is disgusting, diseased, virus, yuck, awful, all of these things. For me, it's like, it's nothing. It doesn't affect you. It's just the thought about it. And that's why I feel like there are so many people walking around with it, not disclosing or not telling, because society has a perception of what it is, which isn't actually what it is. And and I can only speak for myself, I'm worried that I'll be tarnished, or I was worried that I'll be tarnished with this, you're a disgusting person. It also has attached to it, it's like the slut STI. Yep. I was like, how dare I be called this thing? I almost wore this, like I only sleep with boyfriends, like it was a badge of honor. Like I'm so great, and anyone that doesn't do this isn't, and that to me now, I acknowledge that's a judgment. But there's just so much attached to it. Disgusting being the main one. Yeah. Ruined, wrecked, awful, no one will ever love you, no one will ever accept you, your sex life's wrecked. I mean, so many women replying to my video that I put up saying, having a period, it ruins your sex life more than this virus does. It doesn't affect you except for the thought about it.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Going back to that point where you're now contemplating taking your own life because of the shame, mm-hmm. Were you able to open up to anyone at all?
No one. No one. The man that I'd left my partner for, he was deeply in love with me, and he wanted to be with me, so he couldn't see what the problem was. Like, I want to be with you. I love and accept you. We're together now. It's not a problem. Whereas in the back of my head, which I never confided in him, was I just left the love of my life for you because you're the rebound. He was fun and wild and partying, and this was the major breakup of my life. He was just meant to be 2 or 3 months of fun, of just like, I haven't had fun in so long. I've thought this was the person I'm going to marry. You're my rebound. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm stuck with my rebound forever because no one can know this about me, and you accept me, so I get to stay with you. Wow. And so he's saying, I love you. And I'm in the back of my head and like, well, I'm stuck with you because no one else will want me. So I'm just going to stay in this relationship because I'd hate these words to ever come out to my mouth to anyone else. So I don't want to meet another man. And I got to a point where I was like, I hate men as well. And he was treating me really wonderfully. He spoiled me, loved me, emotionally supported me. So I just thought, on paper, you're probably great. You treat me really nicely. You accept me. I'll just stay with you. No one ever have to know this about me. And so, I couldn't confide in him because he'd just be like, I love you so much. I just don't get there's no problem here. And I couldn't confide in anyone else because I felt like I couldn't confide in anyone else because I didn't want anyone to know. And I'd researched online that if you have an incurable STI and you sleep with someone unprotected, that's classed as grievous bodily harm. So I never wanted anyone to know this about me. I didn't want to go to a psychologist and there be written evidence that I've said that I do. And I never went back to that doctor who said that it was that, but I never had any conclusive tests for it. I knew in the back of my head, but I was like, I can never have proof anywhere in this world that I have this. Because I started researching online as well that you can go for blood tests and doctors will tell you that you've tested positive for antibodies, but you don't have it. So in the back of my head, I was like, I'll just deny it forever. No one will ever know.
Wow. Looking back now, and this is more for anyone out there who has it but who isn't comfortable opening up about having it. Do you feel like going and getting advice or clarification or information from a professional would have helped you move through it quicker?
Yeah, or a psychologist who works in it, or personal development. I mean, that was, how you said extreme? I did extreme, and I knew that's where I started my personal development journey, but it took me 2.5 years of personal development to ever consider having this word come out of my mouth. It just, even the word now, I still hate it. I'm like, it could be called anything else. Yeah. But I did extreme leadership, and other people were standing up saying their stories. And I was like, oh no, body image and eating disorders, and I tried to take my life once, and I just like anything. I was like, I can deal with this internally and never have to speak it, and I'll hold it within. But in actual fact, the speaking it is what lessens the shame. Holding it within is what makes it grow and makes it bigger than what it is. My biggest lesson of all of this, especially I did a Facebook Live 2 weeks ago, sharing it. My biggest lesson in all of this was the sharing on Facebook wasn't the painful part. Talking about this right now isn't the painful part. The thought about it, those 6 years, that was the painful part.
Yep. Because without expressing it or having a third person perspective, like those people reaching out to you because of your Facebook Live, it just stays on this negative loop or cycle in your head, and it gets worse and worse, and it compounds. And then that, I guess, feeling of being a fraud, people not knowing that you have it, and that self-loathing just increases. And 6 years of that is a long time.
And the stigma and the biggest response I've got from women, the final thing that majority of them write is, thank you so much, I thought I was the only one. And I have no word of a lie, probably received, and it's only got, I think it's only just got 3,000 views on Instagram around today, which I don't think is a lot of views given the magnitude of response I've got. I've had around 500 messages. That to me seems like an awful lot for women and men walking around thinking I'm the only one.
Yeah. And that's why I feel this is brave, because although we went to extreme and we had people stand up and say that in that safe space, that safe container, I haven't seen people step out and do what you're doing.
Well, a big part of the reason that I'm doing this is I thought to myself, nothing could ever take away the pain that I went through, but what would have made it better? And I thought, if a beautiful woman had stood up and made a stand for me, so that I could have seen her on Instagram or reached out to her or messaged her or just known that, you know, and 6 years ago, if I'd have seen it, she would have, had a lot of women message me and say, I am so triggered by what you've just done. And 6 years ago, I probably would have hated me. I'd have been like, who is this bitch? Just like posting, I don't talk about it. I don't want to know. But 2 years ago would have felt better. 6 months ago would have felt better. And now I'm just like, if so many women are walking around in pain, someone needs to make a stand to make them know that it's okay. Like it's not bad. It's not all these things that Google says or the doctors say, and even men, we need to cut them some slack as well. Men are very loving and very accepting and very understanding, especially a conscious man. The unconscious man, it's not his fault. He's been brought up to not know, and he's been groomed by society to not know how to hold all parts of us. You know, he might want the handbag girlfriend. That's just what society has told him he needs. The conscious man that wants to hold a woman is willing to love and accept all parts and all facets, even this. And this isn't actually a bad thing. And I think that's the beauty in it, is you learn to meet people who truly love you and truly see you and don't just want you to be a handbag or something to show off, but they love all parts of you, the grey and the things that we judge ourselves for.
Yeah, and just like we were saying beforehand, I said to you beforehand that when you first told me, like over private message, I didn't care at all. Like, you're just Bek.
Yeah.
Like, so what if that's what you have?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't register on my mind for more than a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
But it is just that shame and that guilt of holding on for so long. And for anyone out there who hasn't been able to give themselves permission to open up about it yet, how long was it before you, I guess, opened up to someone beyond that partner that you had?
So I went into complete denial for 4 years. It wasn't mine. I'll never go back to that doctor. She can't prove it. I didn't get blood tests. It's not mine. No one ever have to know this about me. I went to another doctor and I was like, I was getting these intense stomach pains. I went through a big breakup. I think I was going through a mental breakdown. And he was like, it was probably just anxiety and a stress reaction. That was your pain. So I was like, this is a stress reaction. No one ever has to know. And so I kept that in the back of my head for 4 years, but I thought about it consistently every single day. And that's one of the things that Preston writes when you apply for Stretch 22, is like, what are you thinking about every day? And I was like, you're thinking about herpes every single day. It hasn't come back, but you're thinking about it. So like, how long are you going to stay in this mental prison? And then one of my best friends, I did Extreme with him, or Bridge, and he put up a video. And I never told him, but he did an STI video as well on Facebook. Wow. And I watched him. I just said, I'm so proud of you. But I was like, I still can't share with him. Probably 8 months after that, so which would have been 2 years ago, we went out for ice cream and I said, I have to tell you something. And I told him, he was like, you've been keeping that from me all along? And I was like, it took that long. I think the stigma is worse for women, especially a woman that's gone through such a body image journey and caring so much what people think, to have what feels like your external appearance ripped from you, and all you have left is like, I had no worth for myself except for my appearance. I'm like, men didn't like me, women didn't like me, I've been bullied, I've been physically abused, and now you've taken my looks from me by giving me this thing that society says is disgusting. I'm completely ruined. Like, how could I ever confide this? All I have to hold on to is potentially being somewhat attractive.
What was that like for you, that interaction and his response? Were you able to take that on board, the fact that he was accepting, or were you still stuck in? I
think in my head I was sitting there looking at someone who was my best friend, that I knew that he did his video however long prior. I'd seen it. I knew that about him. It never crosses my mind since. And I love him all the same. And I have so many people in my circle that confide, especially when you're in the personal development world, that confide such deep and intense things, so much bigger than something like herpes and shame associated with herpes. And I'm just like, I don't judge. I know this about you. I don't judge you for it. I love you so much. In fact, our bond is deeper and there's so much more depth to you and our relationship because I know that about you and you've confided in me. Why am I so special that all of society is going to say, shun me, and I'm the awful one, but everyone else they can confide in me and I won't judge them. So I was like, what makes you so special, Rebecca, that you get to be the one that's extradited from society? You're the awful one. So that's when I was like, maybe it's time to actually face this rather than run from it.
Yes. And I guess for anyone who doesn't know what Stretch 22 is, could you give like a general overview as well as how that's helped you transform and get to this point where you could break through that ego and that fear, being someone who needed external validation, who had a worth based on that, to now being someone who's willing to let that all go, to help others and to turn up authentically?
So Stretch 22 is run by Preston Smiles, who's my mentor and coach, and he runs a 6-month online, basically soul boot camp in a transformation workshop, which is like Bridge and Extreme over 2 weekends online for 6 months. And there's one-on-one coaches, accountability coaches, and you just go in there and you're willing to confront the aspects of you that are holding you back from living your biggest and greatest life. And I knew for me that was this body image thing that had consumed majority of my life, that had got so bad, that had gone from, I think I shared with you last time, I had a horrific overseas breast enlargement surgery, and I'd suffered with eating disorders, bulimia, going from 60 kilos to 47 kilos to almost 70 kilos, and every kilo in between, up and down constantly for almost 10 years. And then this happening to me, and you go in there and knowing that in this personal development world, you want the greatest and highest for yourself so that you can create that for everyone in your extended community as well. And you can be the permission bearer or the leader or the person that goes first so that other people know that there's a path that they can walk and they can do it as well. And so that's what Stretch 22 is. You go in and they give you the tools for you to confront those aspects of yourself that you're hiding from, help you and support you to step into your integrity, having the confronting conversations that you're scared of. Those people that are scared of disclosure, I mean, all the feedback that my biggest fear about coming out about this was the people that I'd slept with that I hadn't told, because I went into denial for 4 years. And after not sleeping with men and only sleeping with boyfriends, I decided I hate myself and I hate men, so I don't care. And I kind of I did sleep around and I didn't disclose. And when a man I just decided, like, I hate men. My thought process was, I effing hate all men. You're selfish, you're reckless, all you care about is yourself. You physically assault me. I had my drink spiked by a man when I was 16. I was completely humiliated. So you spike my drink and humiliate me. You physically assault me. I love you and you take me for granted and you push me into the arms of this man who's given me this. Again, guess not guarantee. I was just like, I hate every single one of you. And so from that point, I went through that space for 4 years. And my biggest fear about coming clean, being open about exactly what my status was people are going to know this about me and people are going to project onto me for having potentially done this to them. And that's hard because everyone wants someone to blame for their pain. I was like, I'm going to be the person that has the courage to say what it is and to be really frank about it, but everyone's walking around not telling anyone, and everyone wants someone to blame for it because ego says, let's blame someone else for our pain, not take accountability for it. So if you're sleeping with me unprotected, there's potential you're sleeping with a lot of people unprotected, especially when you're partying. I'm going to be the person that's going to cop all this blame and abuse for something that's not actually for me to hold. And Stretch 22, that was like a story my ego was holding on to. Like, can't tell because people are going to project and blame and abuse and fight me and bash me, or I had all of these stories. And Stretch 22, with the coaching, they encourage you and hold you while you step into your integrity and get to a point where you disclose and have those confronting conversations and own up to the things that you really do need to own up to, and hold people and apologize to people and have those clearing conversations. And it's hard, it's confronting, but that's what Stretch 22 did for me.
How do you go from constantly needing to project blame to stepping into extreme or radical ownership like you have, I guess, apart from having someone be there to hold space for you while you do it?
I think just realizing the more that I blamed others, it's handing my power over to them, and it takes the power out of my life. I mean, I went into full blame. I blamed the ex that I was in love with because I told him that my needs weren't being met in the bedroom, and we'd broken up many a time. I'd broken up with him in integrity, and I blamed him. I was like, if you had have just shown up the way that I needed, it's your fault. You came asking for me back, and then because you didn't give me what I needed in the bedroom, even though I expressed this to you, you pushed me into the arms of him. Well, that's not true. He didn't meet my needs. I expressed that to him. I broke up with him. He said he'd still love me. I'd take him back. That's on me. I chose to cheat. So for as long as I was I hated him for so long. He was my most, of all of them, because I loved him so much, I hated him the most. And so for as long as I was blaming him, I didn't get to take accountability. For as long as I blamed the next man, it's your fault, you gave me this. I asked you before we slept together and you promised me. Well, did you ask him, did he get a blood test? Because a routine STI check in Australia is just urine samples. They're not testing for herpes because it's so common and it's not deadly and it's just a virus. Did I use protection? Did I ask him, was it a blood test? Did I just take his word for it? So again, he can say, maybe he did get checked. Maybe it was just a urine sample and he was all clear. How could I have really taken control of that situation to protect myself? So for as long as I just kept blaming, it brought like this deep triggering feeling of hatred and anger and just more resentment, which wasn't bringing me joy. And I knew then as well that if I'm projecting at them, it's going to cut me off from being able to have fulfilling relationships ongoing. And I'd gone on this I hate men spree, that it was like, at some point, when are you going to take accountability, Rebecca, for the situation that you're in? Because no one controls you except you. And that's how you get your life back. That's how you take it back.
That's amazing. One of the most powerful questions I think I've ever been asked is, how have you contributed to what you're going through right now? And especially when you're someone in that state where you're blaming everyone else, blaming external conditions, to ask yourself that question really does put the onus back on you and makes you, if you're aware enough and open to it, vulnerable enough within yourself, it allows you to identify areas where you've let slip, where you've made the mistake and you've given your power away, which sounds exactly like what you did through that process.
Well, and it's not, we won't go into too much detail because in case anyone does do it, but you know, the spaceship in extreme leadership. Under pressure in the last moment, my intention was always to choose myself, but under pressure I would forget. And that's shown up time and time in my life. And then the blame would be like, no, someone else. It was his fault. Or the surgeon, when I had the horror overseas surgery, the surgeon's fault. Did I do enough research? Was what he said that he was going to do to my body, did I research and know wholeheartedly that I'd put in the research, say, yes, let's do that to my body. So for as long as I'm just going to, the personal trainer that gave me a diet that I stuck to so what's the word I'm going for? Severely, not even, but so on point with, and then extremely, that I went into almost anorexia, then bulimia, then blamed her for it. Well, she just gave me a diet. So I get to take accountability for everything that I allow to happen to me and all the choices that I make. And then that makes my life my life. Otherwise, I'm literally handing my life over to everyone else.
Well, with what you're doing now, I very much view what you've done as powerful, or what you're doing as powerful. Like, I respected you before because you were the one who connected me with Bridge and Extreme, where I got to face a lot of my flaws and my biggest fears. So I'm deeply grateful to you for that, and I love you for that. But even more so now, and since you messaged me about wanting to speak about this, I have so much more respect for you, and I see you as someone who is powerful, like, and using that, I guess, authenticity.
Thank you.
Being someone in that place though, putting yourself out there to that extent, I'm wondering if there are any tools or modalities that you use to, I guess, manage some of the stress that may come from anxiety or assumptions.
So I definitely think stepping into your integrity and having the confronting conversations, as challenging as they feel, that is definitely one part of it that I feel needs to be done, because you start to respect yourself more. Because when you do things because it's easier, but it's not in your integrity, you then judge yourself for that. So say for any person not disclosing right now the things, I don't get breakouts, it's just easier not to tell, and that's the majority of people who've messaged me online. You then judge yourself for doing that to someone else because you know the pain that you've been through. But I do a lot of mirror work, and I have a super affirmation for self. I have a super affirmation for my body that I say. So if I'm going through body image, I have a super affirmation that is, I love my body. I love every single part of my body. I love all that I can see. I love all that I can't see. I love every organ. I love every bone. I love every single cell. I love my body. And so as soon as I catch myself saying something negative about self, especially about image, because I feel like this virus, my spiritual journey believes it's very much attached to people who are very attached to how they look and are perceived by the external world, I catch the thought and then I choose to cut off that voice and reframe it and say something that's effective. Even if it feels cringy and like it's not true and I don't feel it, and at the moment I am judging myself in the mirror, I feel like that's more just a learned behaviour, and that we get to repattern that.
Is that affirmation something you do with the mirror work, or is the mirror work separate?
Mirror work something, sometimes mirror work as well. I do a lot of megaformer, and so when I'm in the mirror, the old version of myself would be to criticise or to see where I needed to lose weight, change this, modify that, pull my stomach in. And so when I'm exercising and I can see myself in the reflection, I will say that over and over and over again, so that I'm empowering myself and in turn seeing a more beautiful version of myself. To be honest, I've never seen a more beautiful version of myself. As I've been stepping into my integrity, I feel like I'm more fulfilled in my appearance without making any changes, by just being me. And I have a lot of people who are saying, what have you done differently lately? I'm like, I'm just sharing authentically and things that people like, can't believe she did that online on Facebook. And I feel my personal belief is that the trauma is stored in the cells of your being. And once you share it, the trauma then releases. And then your body will settle and be less stressed. So mirror work, super affirmation for body, personal development.
How are you feeling right now?
Honestly, the more I share, the more, the less shame that's attached to it, the more liberated I feel. The more, I get so many Me Toos. I ran a market for my brand on the weekend, and I had women come up to me and hug me, women thank me for their sisters who are freed from their pain, friends from high school that have confided in me. And I'm almost like to the point of, I can't believe I thought it was such a big deal for so long, that now there was so much resistance in me. I was like, I don't want to be the person known for this. I want to be known for everything else, like positivity and fitness and female empowerment. But I also believe, my spiritual belief is that the universe, or God, whoever your God is, makes no mistakes. And for me, it's like, if I truly believe that, then I accept this part of my journey as well as not a mistake. And so key and pivotal to my journey and the journey for all the people that are in my space.
That's amazing. I love that. Before we wrap up, do you have any words of wisdom or advice for someone who does have this, who is contemplating disclosing but is still worried about the external validation or what may come as a result of it?
I think absolutely. I think disclosing is so important, and I understand the journey of denial. So I'm not judging for anyone who doesn't, because I have been there with you. It's a hard process, but you will get through it. And the more that you talk it and speak it and free yourself of it, you'll realize that it does free you of it. A great tool that I did have is actually, I have a list of standards for everything in my life, my personal health, my food, relationships, the men that I'm calling forward. And I wrote those standards down. And instead of judging myself for this thing, realizing that that I have a set of standards that people in my life as friendships, family, need to meet. And so it's not about them accepting this one part of me, but it's about me being in relation or friendship with, like my thing is the person that my friends and my family and my lovers or partners accept all parts of me, including this. So perhaps for the woman or the man worried that someone will judge them, set their standards first and know that the person that you're calling in it's not like, oh, he accepts me, so I'm going to be with him now. It's the person that you're calling in meets all of your standards, which means they love and accept all parts of you, including this. Confide in someone that you really trust. If it means messaging me on Instagram, because I understand I'm there and they're very, very welcome to. It's definitely, I think my biggest fear was not being accepted. And I've never experienced so much acceptance as when I've shared this. And granted, I've written my standards for men. Every man that I've told has actually loved me, held me, accepted me. Majority of them have said, oh, it's not a big deal to me. I thought you were about to tell me something bad. So it's us who are judging ourselves. And it's, for me, the journey is not about who will love you. It's about you have called this forward for a reason. So dive into that and understand, if you're on a spiritual path, why you've called it in. And for me, it was not who will ever love me. For me, it's when will I start to love me. And that when you start to love yourself, everyone else around you loves you more. Or you're open to love because you love you. And I think that's the key. It's not about external acceptance anywhere other than acceptance from within. And once women and men realise, well, I've called this in and it's just a stigmatised virus, it's not deadly, it's not a big deal. Make sure you're very clear and honest with it about doctors when you're pregnant. A lot of women, I had women tell me that they were married for 20 years and not told their partners and not told their doctors when they were pregnant because of the shame. Be open about it. The people that you love will love all parts of you, including something as small as a virus.
Yeah, and it does start with, I guess, trying to love yourself or working on loving yourself. And I'm going to steal that standard list because that's something I haven't done.
Something we did in Stretch 22.
Yeah, that's something I need to look at and do myself. And in talking about those standards, setting those standards for yourself and only calling people in who meet those standards, again, takes a lot of self-love and self-worth and valuing yourself. Do you value yourself, or do you feel like you do right now?
I do. I feel like when I sat, the day I did my Facebook Live, I was sitting there and I was shaking my hand. Like the somatic release was like, this camera was in my hand, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Stretch 22 ended on the Monday and I just sat there and I said, Beck, you've always cared what people think about you. If you don't do this now, every day that you don't do this, you're handing your power over. You're handing your power over. You're handing your power over. When are you going to start to choose you? And I didn't that entire day. In fact, I cried, and I don't cry a lot. I cried that whole day. And then the next morning, I told the girls that were in my team in Stretch 22, I'm like, I'm doing it today. And they're all pep talking me. And they're like, Beck, we love you. You're powerful. You've got a powerful message. You can do this. And then I was crying. I'm like, what am I crying? Like, what am I scared of? And then I think I realized at the last moment I was crying. I was mourning my old self, which was a person that cares so much what people think of her. And the highest part of me was like, let's let go of that and let's start to choose you for once in your life. Make a powerful declaration right here, right now, that even if no one was to respond well to this video, and even if people were to project at you and say nasty, awful things about you, you're making a stand for something that you believe in, which is women radically expressing themselves and loving and owning, accepting all parts of themselves, no matter what. No matter what they've done, no matter what's been done to them, no matter what mistakes they think they might make in the future or how flawed they might believe they are. That's not true. You get to love all parts of you, the good and the things that we perceive as bad, because it's all the self. And there's nothing that's meant for us will ever miss us, including this virus. If you've got it for a reason, and it's just to dive deeper within.
Fuck yes. What are you most grateful for right now?
Preston and Miriam. I really couldn't have done this without them. Preston and Alexi, and Miriam, Bridge and Extreme, Stretch 22, and then every person that enters that community, because you just have a group of people that are loving you exactly as you are, traumas, flaws, everything that you've ever been through, holding you through it, and you've got this like energetic cheer squad of people saying you can do it. And that's kind of just what people need. It's just a little, like, our intuition says I can, and then ego says no, but what if? But what if your house gets, I had this story that my house was going to get graffitied, my car was going to get keyed, like my ego came up with so many stories. And so and then your mind can buy into that. But if you've got your little energetic cheer squad of Preston, Miriam, and everyone who believes what we believe, encouraging you, just like, you get to that Tuesday with your phone in your hand, you're like, can't believe I'm gonna do this on Facebook, my poor mum, my family, I'm gonna do it. And you do it. And that's what I'm grateful for myself, and I'm grateful to myself for choosing personal development.
What does Preston say about leaders going first?
Leaders go first. Like, everyone is waiting for someone to say it's okay. So everyone's confided in me and said me too, and you're so brave and you're so courageous. It's almost like, for me, I'm like, this is a cosmic joke. I've got all these replies. I feel like 1/3 or even 30 or 40 or 50% of the population have this, but I'm the one that's going to say it. But if that's what it takes for someone to go first, to create the space for people to be like, me too. It's like, as soon as it's that running race, you know, when the sprinter, that no one had ever got that time, and once he got it, everyone got it. It's just the belief that you can. The belief that I can say, I have herpes and I love and accept all parts of me, and I know that every man and or woman that comes into my life will love and accept me for this too. It doesn't change who I am as a person. It does not wreck my sex life. It doesn't ruin my visual image. It doesn't make me ugly, disgusting, or any of the things that ego told me it was. And you're the exact same. You're loved exactly as you are. Oh, okay. All right. Like, someone made a stand for me, you know, and it doesn't end your life. It doesn't end the world. So I definitely believe that there would be suicide statistics attached to this, and we would never know, because I considered taking my life and no one would have known for what reason. So I feel like Preston says leaders go first, and we get to, as leaders of our community, say the things that people are afraid to say to make them feel okay for it. People just want to be made to feel okay for their pain, the things that are taboo, the things that aren't spoken about, the things that are stigmatized, because as soon as one person makes a stand and says, I go through this, and I know that someone else does, and I'm willing to say yes, so that you don't have to say it to me, you don't have to message me on Instagram. I've had 500 messages. I bet there's more than that haven't messaged me. It makes people feel someone else is going through it, therefore I'm not the only one, and I'm okay. That's all people want to know.
Just well. To wrap up, just want to acknowledge you again, making time for this, but most importantly, for being a leader, being someone who's going first with something and a topic that isn't really talked about, it isn't spoken about, and essentially what you're doing is you're piercing that stigma. Right now, you're leading the way. You're showing people that it's okay to speak up, to talk about it, that you are enough, even if you have it. And I'm just grateful for you being this person, knowing you, loving and appreciating you, and seeing you step into your power, breaking through that ego and doing what you're doing now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this with me.